Hello, friends, and welcome back to another set of malicious compliance stories. Our story today starts with one woman's dream, a quiet Sunday. Unfortunately, it also starts with her waking up to 4 separate houses trying to force that dream on everyone else. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Lady demands a quiet Sunday gets shut down by the mayor of the street. Today, between 10:30 a.m. and 12 p.m., this lady came up on 4 people on my street, one of them being my husband, and tried to tell them they needed to stop mowing their lawns. Her reason? Some people around here want a quiet Sunday. The final person she told, our neighbor Joe, fake name. A little aside about Joe, he's honestly the friendliest neighbor on the street. My husband and I joke he's the mayor of the street. Joe had stopped his mower to talk to my husband while he was walking my dog. This lady came up to them with the same song and dance about wanting a quiet Sunday. Joe laughed and said, "We'd all be having one if you were at home instead of out here yapping off at people just trying to take care of their homes." My husband said he'd never seen a person's face go so red. She stomped off. Turns out she lives at the end of the road that leads to our road. We live in a cul-de-sac almost a quarter mile away from our home. Update, she's having a picnic. Should I go down there and tell her some people around here would like a quiet holiday? This is an interesting phenomenon. She probably thinks the people who are mowing decide to mow at that time because their neighbors are mowing. The truth is, between typical work schedules and weather and grass and weed growth rates, there are certain times when mowing is possible, and of those, fewer times when mowing is optimal. If it's optimal on a Sunday, it's optimal for everyone in the area on a Sunday. So it appears to her that her neighbors are copycat mowers. And our second story. Ice, guns, and HOA revenge. The week everything changed. I was raised by my grandparents in a small neighborhood long before an HOA ever existed there. My parents were teenagers when I was born, and if I'm being honest, they made sure I knew I wasn't the one they wanted. By the time I was 10, my grandparents had taken me in and gave me something my parents never could: stability. When they passed, they left me the house. I never married, never left. I like quiet. I like being prepared. And maybe that's paranoia, but it's the kind that pays off. Before COVID ever hit, I already had years' worth of supplies: food, propane, water, first aid, and more toilet paper than Costco could fit on a pallet. When people were fighting in grocery store aisles for Lysol, I was sipping coffee on the porch. The HOA, though, they'd been a problem since before my grandparents died. My grandparents refused to join when it formed in the early 2000s. The board didn't take that well. They'd show up uninvited, demand dues, even threaten to fine my grandparents. My grandfather called them wannabe warlords with clipboards. I installed cameras back then to catch them harassing my grandparents, and thank God I did. Because when they illegally towed my grandfather's station wagon off our private driveway, we used that footage to sue. They settled, we got a few $1,000s. The HOA never bothered us again after that, but the hatred was mutual. When I inherited the house, the new president, Bill, came by once, puffed his chest, and said, "You know, it's not too late to join the community." "Bill," I told him, "I've got a community. It's called Not Talking to You." He didn't come back after that. Then came the ice storm of 2021, the one that knocked out power for over a week. When it hit, I was fine. My generator was running, I had propane heaters, and my freezer stayed cold. My house looked like a beacon compared to the rest of the block, soft yellow light glowing through the frost while everyone else sat in the dark. Day one, my next-door neighbors, a young couple with an infant, came by, desperate. Their house was an icebox. I told them to grab what they could and come over. A few hours later, another neighbor across the street had a tree collapse through their roof. I tied a rope to my porch, crawled through the sleet, and helped them get their family out. They came back with me, too. By nightfall, I had 2 families and a baby camped in my living room. The next morning, I checked on George and Gracie, an elderly couple who'd been friends with my grandparents. I found them sitting in their idling car just to keep warm. I hauled them inside, got them wrapped in blankets, and gave them hot soup. We made it work. Everyone pitched in, sharing batteries, propane, generators. Kids were laughing, playing card games. I hadn't heard that kind of noise in this house since my grandparents were alive. But the HOA saw my house lit up like a Christmas card, and that's when things went downhill. On the second day of the outage, the HOA board, 6 of them, bundled in parkas, marched up to my porch like they were on an inspection. Bill spoke first. "We've decided the neighborhood needs a central shelter. You're the only one with power and supplies. We'll bring our families here." I stared at them. "You think I'm opening my house to the same people who tried to sue my grandparents for owning bird feeders?" "You're being selfish," one woman said. "You have heat. You should share." "I already am sharing," I said, motioning inside, "but none of you are invited. Leave." Bill smirked. "You don't want to make enemies during a crisis." "Already got plenty," I said, and closed the door in his face. That night, the wind howled and the temperature dropped even lower. We rationed propane and took turns keeping watch. Me, the 2 dads, and George. I slept on the couch with my 12-gauge beside me. On the third night, around 1 a.m., I heard pounding in the garage. One of the dads, Tom, was braced against the door, gritting his teeth. They're trying to force it open. At that exact moment, a shotgun blast echoed through the night. I ran to the back door and saw George standing there, barrel still smoking. "Just a warning shot," he said calmly. 2 of them were creeping by the back fence. We rushed outside, flashlights cutting through the icy dark, and sure enough, 10 people were slipping and sliding across the frozen field, trying to flee. Bats, crowbars, and hammers in hand. The HOA board and their teenage sons. I shouted, "Drop the weapons," and blinded them with my 1,000-lumen torch. They froze, wide-eyed, breath clouding in the air. Bill stammered, We just needed supplies." "You tried breaking into my home with weapons," I said. "You're lucky George didn't aim lower." George stepped forward and growled, "We ought to break a few fingers just so you remember what cold really feels like." They begged us not to call the cops. I leaned on my shotgun and said, "You come near my property again, someone's getting ventilated." They scattered, slipping on the ice like clowns, one of them face-planting into a snowbank as they ran. The rest of the week was tense, but quiet. We kept watch, played cards, and shared whiskey while the storm howled. When the thaw came, it revealed the damage. Broken trees, shattered pipes, and a neighborhood that looked like a war zone. Turns out, while most people had banded together to survive, grouping 3 or 4 families per home, the HOA board had holed up in one house with a wood stove. They burned anything they could find. Broken furniture, stolen lumber, even fence panels. A few neighbors had entire piles of firewood vanish. No one could prove it was them, but everyone knew. When the power came back, the neighborhood wasn't just cold, it was done with the HOA. In February, nearly everyone signed a petition for an emergency meeting. The board tried to laugh it off, saying it was illegal without proper notice, so we got lawyers. I went to court, and that's when the real fun started. Turns out the HOA had been cooking the books for years. Fake maintenance charges, misused funds, even embezzlement. The judge didn't hesitate. The entire board was removed, and the HOA was dissolved pending investigation. It never came back. Bill sold his house within a month. The others followed. These days, the neighborhood's quiet again. The dads I sheltered, Tom and Greg, are my regular beer buddies. George and Gracie still come by for dinner on Sundays. We keep our home stocked, our generators fueled, and our gates reinforced. I love that the story doesn't end with bloodshed or a Hollywood speech. It ends the way real people would do it. Protect your own, rebuild your circle, and quietly outlast the idiots. George sipping whiskey while the wind howls outside? That's the kind of neighbor you want in an apocalypse. If this were a video story, I'd end it with, moral of the story, never mess with the guy who still chops wood and checks the generator once a month. And our last story. The Homeowners Association broke into my house. At 6 p.m, click of the peephole, and there's a woman on my porch with a razor-sharp bob, a gleaming clipboard, and a smile trained at weekly board meetings. This is a quiet American suburb, a cul-de-sac where lawns are as even as notebook paper, and the USPS mailman knows every dog by name. She doesn't bother introducing herself, already skimming the doorframe, the floor, me. Routine exterior inspection under the CC&R, she says, smooth as a weather report. Containers, grass height, setback from the property line. I hold my ground and don't step back. Exterior inspection stays outside. Have a good evening. The door closes softly. Click. The Ring doorbell winks, a green dot. On the jamb, a tiny sticker reading camera number 2 stays put. Invisible. Just how it should be. I'm living in my sister's house for now. This is Virginia. Quiet streets, maples, a school bus at 7:15. She left for Portugal for love and sockless loafers, leaving me notarized power of attorney over the home. She knew my years had been rough. About work, briefly. Officially, I'm suspended for a month, not fired, just a pause. We'll put a period on that later. A week of small humiliations piles up into a brisk montage. Close up, my lawn, 1.5 inches over spec. Her tape measure snaps like a tongue. Close up, trash cans. Must be behind the fence, not on the driveway. Close up the grill. 17 inches too close to the property line. The clipboard shines like a polished iceberg. I smile, apologize, move things, though my yard already looks like a Home Depot catalog. At night, a faint flare in the window. Moonlight? Or someone's phone? The courtesies start arriving. Anonymous notes in the mailbox, which, by the way, is federal property. Random slips don't belong there. Doctored photos in the neighborhood Facebook chat. Shadows under the awning, darker than physics allows. Captioned, unpermitted addition? I save the screenshots. Click. The neighbor to my left, Martha, a slight woman who wears her keys on a velvet ribbon, stops me by the fence. I saw her with a flashlight at 3 a.m, she whispers. I'll sign a statement if you need it. I thank her. Martha's fingers tremble, though not for long. And here comes the TikTok. I'm waiting for a UPS courier with a document pack, updates to the power of attorney, insurance, papers for my father after a minor stroke. Privacy isn't a preference here, it's a need. Inside the envelope are doctors' addresses and prescriptions. On the hall table, amid the mail, lies an innocent USB hub, just plastic to her. To me, a beacon. Inside it, a tiny wide-angle number 2 synced with the ring and a mini camera in the kitchen light. That evening, I make a mistake. Leave the front door unlocked. The latch doesn't fully seal. Tick. I crack the curtain exactly 2 fingers wide, set the envelopes in plain view, leave the key to the storage closet by the router like a tired homeowner who forgot. I put on the kettle. Its first whistle will mean the 3 video feeds have aligned in sync. Click. Recording is live. She arrives right on time, as if her life runs on the HOA's Google Calendar. First, a shadow in the frosted glass, then a careful step onto the porch. The ring chimes. Ding. Hello? Anyone home? I keep quiet. I'll leave a notice, she says to the doorbell. I can check your mail so it doesn't get wet. Her hand touches the handle. The door opens without resistance. A firm heel crosses the threshold. Click. Her pen on the clipboard snaps as she photographs the mail on the table, my hub, the little things. She moves like a museum Dawson. Kitchen, hallway, phone panning, a reflection in the kettle, zero awareness that the kettle's my metronome. I step from the hallway shadows exactly as she reaches for the envelope with my father's name. Routine inspection, she says, voice like ice. Bylaws allow an interior check if there's a complaint. I raise my phone so it's in frame. On the screen, 4 live windows. Ring, kitchen lamp, camera number 2, hub. Her face warps between angles like in a crystal ball, and her words fracture against this polygon of truth. I tap the screen. Click. Recording's been rolling for 3 minutes. I say the bylaws allow inspections. She repeats like a mantra. The bylaws don't rewrite the Virginia Criminal Code, I reply. The kettle sends its first whistle, a pause. Exactly the length of her breath. She switches tactics, sliding the clipboard to block the mail. We had complaints. Complaints live outside. The threshold is the line. You crossed it. I state the address, date, time clearly. You're inside a private residence without the owner's or agent's consent. Your actions are recorded from 4 cameras. She arches a brow. And who are you to... Now it's time for the late payoff. I reach for the slim frame on the console. Beneath the glass sits a patch. I slide the glass, take out the ID, snap the case, click. Police. Temporarily suspended, but with my commission. Stay where you are. Don't touch the envelopes. She tries a smile that says we can work this out, but gravel's already crunching outside. Martha steps onto the porch, squarely in the ring's field of view. I dial 911 on silent. Click. Illegal entry into a dwelling, I tell the dispatcher calmly. Synchronized video from interior cameras and ring, and a witness on scene. Stay on the line, comes the cool professional voice. The HOA head makes a half step back, but the kettle hits a second whistle, and a minute later, 2 Sheriff's Department Blue Explorers wash the cul-de-sac in red and blue. Two deputies listen, then watch the video on my phone. One confirms HOA bylaws don't give authority to enter a residence without a warrant or consent, correct? Correct. They regulate exteriors and common areas. The other marks the time of entry and flags the frame of her hand over my letter. Martha, steady now. I saw her go in on her own. No permission. I'll write a statement. We can come to an understanding, the president murmurs. I was just protecting your mail. In America, I answer, understanding start at the doorbell, not in my kitchen. The rest assembles in a swift news-style montage. The incident report, references to trespass and invasion of privacy under state code, her brief ride in the Explorer to the magistrate for booking. A body cam catching her, I was just doing my duty, under which someone will later caption, an HOA is not law enforcement. By morning, the HOA board holds an emergency meeting in the clubhouse, suspension pending investigation. A week later, membership vote and removal from office. The new president posts a dry reminder in the chat, inspections are exterior only and by consent, entering a residence is prohibited. Someone in the neighborhood, not me, uploads a short screen record, 4 angles, perfect sync, her hand over my mail. That's all people need, no lectures required. UPS delivers the envelope, this time I take it on the porch, under the light, and the ring makes the faintest click, logging a completed route. My father sleeps in the living room, the monitor chirps like a cricket in the grass. I pull a blanket over him and set the envelope on the cabinet. In this country, privacy isn't a luxury, it's the air you breathe at home. Later, when someone asks how I beat the system, I think back to that first doorstep and her line about permitted inspections. At the end, I hand it back to her in a mirror. The bylaws don't rewrite the criminal code. Rules aren't there to wield power over neighbors. They're there to protect the boundaries. Even if a clipboard gleams in your hand, even if your heels tick with metronomic confidence. And every click in this story isn't just a sound, it's memory that won't erase. It's the system doing what, in the United States, it's meant to do. Not against us, but for us. Rules exist to protect people's boundaries, not to empower petty tyrants. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.